Welcome to another edition of Chat Nap with AI Chatterbox Chuck and Howie, a podcast dedicated towards metrology. I'm Chuck Ellis, and I'd like to introduce my partner in crime, Howard Zion. Good
Hello,
afternoon,
Chuck.
Howard.
How are you today?
I am tired, be honest with you.
Yeah, what happened?
I don't know if I got the flu or just the holiday season has drug on so much that I need to now take a month off from the holiday season.
You ever play one of those search games where there's a picture and you're trying to find certain things in the picture, or you're trying to decipher between two pictures what's different?
Yeah.
So you notice anything different in this
Your
picture?
pictures, it looks, all the pictures that were on your background are missing.
Yeah, they're missing. They're gone.
Yes. And it's a different color on the wall.
Not yet.
It,
Not
it
yet.
looks, it, well,
So that's exactly right. The pictures are gone. Pretty soon, all the rest of the stuff will be gone after we do our next recording. And then the painters are here. They're actually working in the other rooms. So they're repainting the inside of the house.
hopefully they're not going to come inside and say, we could start painting behind you.
You never know.
That will be a real Benny Hill. I don't know if you're old enough to remember who Benny Hill was.
I used to watch Benny Hill all the time.
Yeah. So that would,
Yeah,
that would,
they'll come in and they'll paint a Picasso or something in the background. Anyway, the point of that was that all that change is going on right in the middle of us recording these podcasts. They're out to lunch right now, so they'll be coming back in. Hopefully it won't be too much noise. Pretty good with the directional mic, not picking up that stuff. But because of that, it's Christmas time, as you said, but our Christmas is done. Like, we took everything down so that we could prep the walls and everything, take everything out of the rooms, put everything in the center so they could paint the house inside.
Yeah. Well, we had a good thing. We didn't put that much up, so we didn't have to take everything down like you did. I mean, you had a ton of stuff you put up.
Oh, so much stuff.
Yeah, too much.
She added two more totes worth of stuff this year.
Oh, my goodness.
I don't have any more. All of my storage spaces are full. I don't have anywhere else to put anything else.
Of totes, of Christmas totes.
Yep.
I mean, for the person that has never seen your house at the holidays, it literally is a scene right out of a Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
And so anyways, we got to talk about our guest today.
We do. We have a great guest again.
We got a guy that at one point in time, we would call him a player in the industry. He was Mr. NavLab, head of the NavLab program, knows the standards, the accreditation standards, specifically ISO 17025 inside and out, was on numerous committees for that. He served as the program manager for the Joint Naval Audit Certificate Program at Corona. And that's where I met Steve many, many years ago. He's been around
just in Corona 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Well,
and then WC. Yeah.
Just stopped and said hi to him.
Yeah.
So Steve was extremely active with NCSLI, with the Z540 Standards Writing Committee. Prior to his actual doing work, he was actually on a bench, and he became well known for being an expert in pressure and vacuum measurements. His specialty, if you will, is pressure and vacuum. And then he got into the quality side, and he became such a quality expert that he just moved right up to the ranks. And like I said, he became, program manager for NavLab, and we all know what NavLab is. So currently he retired, and then he was brought out of retirement by a fellow friend of ours. And he currently is a senior metrologist at the metrology lab at Marshall Flight Center, I think they call it. And he is the quality manager for that particular location. He's been around a lot, so he'll be exciting and to talk about the development of the accreditation standards, how we went from, those old 45662A until, well, hell, Steve's probably been long enough where he knows what 45662 is.
There's Steve now.
Hey, Chuck. Hey, Howard.
Join the club. How are you, Steve?
Fine. Good.
Glad to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, you said NavLab and everyone knows that, but just for the audience members who we're trying to attract who may not know that's National Voluntary Laboratory Accreditation Program.
Correct.
It's one of the accrediting bodies for the United States.
I want to address a point where I think Steve can give his 2 cents as well, but over the last going on, 20 plus episodes we've talked a lot about integrity and ethics. I've had a lot of people reach out to me off the record here and say, we don't talk about it enough. And they like the fact that we are talking about it because it's becoming a problem where we're losing some of the ethics, some of the integrity in our industry. And I think that's an important thing, that's a topic that we want to continue. But, the truth is, guys, I don't want people not to think that there are literally, what is there, I think the estimate is like 50,000 calibration technicians throughout providing measurements in North America. Of those 50,000, it's a small number that are doing bad things. And, and as in any profession, you have that. So don't get me wrong that I don't think that we are doing things on an ethical level, because absolutely we are. The community is one of the most respected type professions out there, but there's still a lot of bad people in our lives that we have to be, cautious of. And that's all I want to say on that today. First question I want to ask you is, why did you come out of retirement, and why did you go back to NASA? What is it like working at NASA nowadays?
When I retired and we left California, we'd become accustomed to a certain lifestyle. And so we knew that I was still going to be engaged in some type of employment. Mm-hmm. So when we first moved here to Tennessee, I spent the first 5 years just doing consulting, consulting and also doing assessments for accreditation bodies. And then at the time, I was contacted by Gary Kennedy at NASA, who was running their metrology program. And he just asked me to do some consulting, gap analysis on 2 different laboratories there at Marshall Space Flight Center. Mm-hmm. And so I spent some time over there. And when that concluded, say a week or 2 later, I got a call from Kirk Foster, the lab manager, and he asked me if I was interested in a full-time position. And at that point in time, I was getting tired of doing all the traveling with assessments. And I said, talk to me. And so we came up with a plan, and I think it's worked out great for both of us and for the organization. And I got to tell you, I really enjoy the folks there at Marshall Space Flight Center and working with them. It's a great group of people. It's like I tell them, it's the best job I've had yet.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I think one of the things that I know personally, like I like to add to the mix, is you're, without a doubt, you've been around since 45662. And not 2. And your job at NASA is you don't deal just with the folks there. You deal with all the service centers. You have your hands in a lot of pots where you help out the other service centers as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we do work for some of the other centers. The bottom line is everyone's concerned about the same thing, making measurements right, doing that type of stuff. I just say that when I worked at NavLab and as an assessor, you can go in and assess laboratory, but you really can't, in a sense, help them. You can't consult with them. You can explain where they're falling short. Mm-hmm. When I was in the working for the Navy and I was managing that certification program, there was a Colonel Marie Giuliano who for the Marine Corps, and she was their metrology person, and she kind of brought it to my attention real quick that was kind of like a closed system. So like when I was managing that program and I'm talking with our auditors, I'm like, you can't really be giving them advice and this and that. But then it was like, listen, Steve, we're a closed family. And she said, our end goal is putting metal on targets. So we help each other. We share best practices, that type of thing, which is completely different from being in an accreditation body.
Sure.
Yeah. It's that same type of spirit here at NASA amongst all the centers. Everyone always cooperates and does their best. A lot of questions go around asking, hey, have you guys encountered this or that? And everyone really works together.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be a great atmosphere to have, in any cal lab? I mean, back when I worked for the big lab, it was always, a fight to implement, anything of a new quality or to do extra steps to ensure that something or other. And it really was like a constant battle with my department head. So you don't see that much anymore? I mean, Howard, do you have that at Transcat as much as well, or?
So with a commercial enterprise, you're supporting tens of thousands of customers, at least we are, right? From all different industries, all different walks of life. You got people coming and going in those positions that are making decisions about the calibration process that they need or that they perceive they need. And they're at opposite ends of each other, right? They're not all working together. They work for different companies. Even if they're in the same industry, they're not all at the same place, knowledge-wise, experience-wise. So you're really dealing with a very wide exposure of different personnel.
Yeah.
That opens itself to a lot of opportunity for consulting, whether it's paid or free, right? It doesn't matter. But opportunities to have great discussions with people who will listen or are willing to listen or want to know or learn more. there are some people you'll come across that don't care about that, right? They don't see the connection, they don't care about the connection of the measurements on the instruments and what that does to product decisions. So I get the entire gamut of that.
Yeah. Steve, one thing that I also know about you, you've been around a long time. You really know not only the current standard, but you know the previous standard that we all lived by for years. And so can you speak to your knowledge and how you went from some of the old standards to the new standard, and your transition, especially with your time at NAVLAP and in the Navy as well? I mean, were you around when you transitioned from the old standard to the new standard when you were in charge of the Navy program?
Yeah, so by the time I got in the Navy program, they have their own standard that they use for the Joint Naval Audit Certification Program. And so when I was actually in the Navy, we operated under 45662. And being in the Cal Lab, we had an annual review called the Calibration Capability Review. And so we had auditors coming in once a year, looking at everything we did. And so that was looking at 45662. So when I got out of the Navy, and my first job was in the pressure and vacuum group at NIST, I got there, and I'm the new guy. They hired me because the guy I was replacing was retiring in 5 years, and so they wanted to make sure that I knew what I was going to be doing. And so I was basically working on crossfloats with deadweight piston gauges. And so the guy I was working with, I'd ask him and say, well, where's your procedure for this? Or where's your procedure for that? And then I'd ask about, well, when was the last time these masses were calibrated, or, your RTDs? And after about a day of this, he just stopped everything and he looked at me and said, Steve, you're not in the Navy anymore. You're at NIST. And I said, well, okay. So I started developing procedures for my own benefit. We used a cross-float method, but I developed procedures on how we performed that cross-float method. I went to my group leader. I got all of our masses recalibrated. I had our temperature devices recalibrated. And then about that time, Guide 25 had been out, and I knew about Guide 25. So then I said, well, I'm going to develop a quality program for the pressure group based on Guide 25. And so that was where I first got got really involved with developing a quality system to just basically to help me so I could better understand what was going on and ensure that everything we did was above board. I mean, what I found was, like, when we had those masses calibrated, it had been years since they'd been calibrated. And the largest shift we found in any mass value was 4 parts per million on a 26-pound platter. And I attribute that to the guy that I worked with, Walt Marcus. He was just he knew what he was doing. When he was done with things, he put them away, put them back where they belong, everything. And so I was really impressed, but I needed to develop those procedures for my benefit.
Yeah, consistency of your process is critical to maintaining your measurement uncertainties and not getting large deviations or variances from that.
Yeah.
So you started basically on the Guide 25, and then what led you to? I see from your bio, you also participated in a lot of NCSLI writing committees and things like that. So at what point did you guys convert over or become an expert in the 17025 standard? What was your basis of what were you involved with, I should say, Steve, from developing that standard with NCSLI?
So I was working in the pressure group, and NAVLAP was going, it had been several years there at NIST, but they had just recently started their calibration laboratory program. And the first person to head that up was Jim Sigler. And Jim came from the Navy Yard along, and he brought Doug Faison with him and another guy, John Krickenberger. And so they're new, so they're getting tours of all the spaces, all the labs, and they came through the lab while I was doing something. And I had an old analog pressure gauge, and I'm tapping on it, just watching that needle, make sure I get the fluctuations out. And Jim Sigler says, well, where'd you learn that? I said, well, I was in the Navy for 9 years in a Cal Lab. And so that kind of began the relationship that I developed with Jim. And so yes, I was involved with some writing groups at the NCSLI, thanks to Chuck Ehrlich. Chuck was my group leader at the time, and he got me involved. And so at going to NCSLI, I began to develop relationships with people. And I knew where Jim and Doug sat because they were just across the parking lot from me. So one day I went over and I said, if you guys are ever going to expand your program and you're looking for another person to join you, let me know. And so it was sometime later, but they approached me and said, would you like to come to work at NavLab as a NavLab program manager in the calibration program? And I said, yes. And then that was where I really started getting heavily involved with 17025.
That's when I met you, when you were program managers, when I first met you back then, back in the day.
It was an interesting experience because when I got out of the Navy and I moved to Washington, D.C., and I had no idea really what I was going to do. Back in the time, the NCSLI would print out their proceedings along with all of the participants of the conference. And so I had a copy of one of those. I opened it up one day and I just went like that. And I looked at the name, and I think it was Ernest Garner at NIST. So I called him. He was in the calibration program. He said, come on out, bring your resume. So I took my resume out there and sat down and we talked about it. He says, I'll distribute it and hopefully you'll hear from someone. And shortly after that, I heard from Chuck Ehrlich, had interviews and went to work in the pressure group.
You're dropping a lot of names here, Steve. Did Chuck retire yet, or is he still with NIST?
No, Chuck has retired, but he's still doing some, I don't know if you call him a guest research, I don't know what you'd call Chuck, but yes, he's still involved.
He is, okay.
Still involved, yes.
Because you mentioned Ernest. Ernest was, I remember Ernest retiring 20 years ago.
Yeah, and also Joe Simmons was there in the office at the time.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I had really good conversations with Joe as well.
All I want to say is that we're too old. Then if we know all these old guys.
Yeah, I do.
Well, so I know some of those names that you mentioned: Jim Sigler, Joe Simmons, Chuck Ehrlich. I don't know if I know some of the other ones though. I don't think I've ever met any of those other people.
Ernest Gardner. Ernest Gardner was a very knowledgeable guy, and he was the one that was preached forever about, NIST traceability. He was a big person about what is NIST traceability. Just by saying that doesn't mean you have it.
What a great position to hold, though, and experience.
I really feel fortunate. I think everything comes about because of relationships.
It does. Absolutely does. Yeah. So is Chuck still at the conferences?
He was last year. I
thought he was.
I saw Chuck last year.
Okay.
Spent some time. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this then, Steve, from your perspective. We tease ourselves. We've been around forever. I've been doing this for 45 plus years. Howard's been doing it for 41 years, something like that, Howard.
43.
Steve, you've been around just as long as I have. Like I said, so from your perspective, how has metrology evolved over the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? And what are the major changes that you think are coming in either the near future or, the 10 years from now? Is it, for example, we have a lot of conversations about AI. So I'm curious about, that your thoughts on that as well.
As these standards are developed and evolve, we have to constantly be learning ourselves. And if we're not willing to put in the work to learn these things and ensure we're doing things right, and look objectively at these standards, I think we're doing a disservice because we have to educate ourselves. And something that I have heard ever since I've been in this business is that coming from a Cal Lab perspective or an accreditation body perspective, it's always been, we just have to educate the customer. Mm-hmm. And I find that is ongoing, and educating the customer. And it always will be. And I'll tell you, one of the things that has really impressed me about being here at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. So we're the metrology and calibration program, metrology and calibration laboratory. So not only are we just calibrating our customers' equipment, we provide metrology solutions for them. So in a sense, we really partner with our customers, and we try to learn, you don't know everything, but when they come to us with a question, we go back to them with questions. How are you using this device? How is it used? What environment is this device used in? All of these things. So I think that we really have a relationship with our customers. And so, it's constantly educating our customers. I think standards are going to continue to evolve. Working at NASA, I had to learn all about AS 9100 because, contractually, that's what we operate under, our laboratory. And then we made the decision a few years ago to become accredited to 17025. And so that was, bringing people in the lab up to speed on 17025. And I think that the standards, it's interesting. I know I think 10,012 was just revised and is going to be coming out and looking at more along the lines of ensuring more around measurement, traceability, and calibration and those things.
I actually have a customer in the medical device industry who is now required to follow 10,012, and they're going to become accredited or audited to that, which is forcing their internal lab to now develop measurement uncertainties and understand how that all applies. And they don't really want to have to do that. They don't want to become the experts at that. So that's where we're stepping in to be able to take care of that. We actually have another one of their sites where we've already gotten the site accredited years ago, like 14 years ago. And so we've shown them we can do this for you. You don't need to become the experts.
Yeah.
Let us step in and handle that for you. And you're right, that evolution, something you said earlier, you've got all these different documents. You've got American standards, right? American national standards. You've got all these individual standards that kind of sat on their own for the industries they served, for the specific companies that they had been developed for. And in the last couple of decades, these have been merging together, which is where we come up with 17025 now, because even military standard, right, 45662, which was then A, was replaced then by Z540.1, correct? Mm-hmm. Then Z540.3, which started getting into guard banding and the requirements there. All of that stuff has now merged into these international standards to say, we all need to be doing this the same. You can't be having your independent silos of controlling your quality, controlling risk. It needs to all focus to this one point. So I'm glad to see it evolving that way. But the problem is, even after a couple of decades of this, companies still are reluctant to embed it and implement it and understand it. And so when you talked about constantly having to educate your customers, I think the root cause there that still needs to be addressed, when you look at engineering programs, at least in the US, probably worldwide, but at least in the US, they don't really have anything in their curriculum to go through traceability and understanding how measurements of equipment control the process and the product. They may have a course that says, here's what these instruments are, and that's about it, right? If they have that. So it's lacking there, which is then driving the need for them to understand that, which opens the opportunity for metrology and calibration to provide that metrology exposure. And here's how it all ties together. What are you using it for? What are you trying to do with this instrument? And here's how it ties to the calibration and traceability.
Yeah.
Have either of you guys seen the new 10,012 document?
I haven't seen it.
I have not.
I need to look at that.
I haven't either. That's why I asked, because I was not a big fan of the 10,000 document being, rewritten, and I'd like to see if it closely matches 1725. I guess I was one of the old people who are saying, why are we redoing this document? Because it's an ASQ document versus them not wanting an international standard document. Does the auto industry want its own document? I guess that's the question that I would ask the people that are higher up than I am. So, but hopefully the new 10,012 mimics 1725 to a certain extent, because I think we can all agree the current 1725 is probably the best version of any quality document that I've been around with in my little time that I've been in this business. So all right, next question, Howard.
Yes, sir.
So Steve mentioned something, and I probably should put you on the what's the word I'm looking for here? I'm searching like myself. I'm not feeling on the spot. Let's use that. Yeah. You mentioned educate. I know that Steve mentioned that they do a lot of that. Do you think, for example, that should become almost like second nature for everyone that's doing calibrations in order for them to understand their customer? Shouldn't it be contract review? Because I don't think we do enough contract review under the quality document that requires it. But shouldn't you, as a cal lab, understand your customer's requirements prior to performing a calibration?
Well, to me, that's the difference between just checking boxes on 1725 requirements and really becoming self-aware is the term I'm going to use, to understand that you could ask a client what they need, and they're going to give you their answer of what they think they need, right? And sometimes they know exactly how this all ties together, and sometimes they don't. And just having a conversation with them, and that's contract review, right? You can't have that with two non-technical people who don't know the processes. right, of calibration or of the production process, you need to have a couple of people that are embedded in that to have just a genuine open conversation to say, what are you doing with these measurements? How are you applying this? Here's what you're missing. And Steve, this is where I'm going to go back to something you said earlier. Without that, it creates a quality blind spot. It creates a silo between metrology and calibration and production or testing or services or whatever, right? And as soon as you divorce those two, you get quality blind spots that crop up without people even understanding those are creating problems, and you're not tying it back to that. So it's very important, I think, that education process and that contract review to be a natural discussion about what are you doing with the instruments, then let's tie that back to how you make sure those measurements are solid.
You know, it's something because you mentioned that. I know that as a quality manager for the lab, I'm also developing training for our people. And so we train on AS 9100. We'll train on 17025. And so what I've been working on is training presentations for next year. And so again, we're repeating a little bit different, but we're going to do an AS 9100 again. We're going to do an ISO 17025. But then also this year, we're going to do a very in-depth training on our quality management system and how it folds in all these standards, along with the NASA standard 8739.12 and some parts of Z540.3.1. And so this year, our training I think it's going to be much more comprehensive on our quality management system than it has been in the past.
Oh, that's great.
And I think if they get a better understanding, that helps with what you call some of these quality blind spots.
Yeah, makes them connect the dots, right?
Yes.
And I'll just give a brief example because I think this is important for anyone listening in the audience. When you look at manufacturer specifications, some manufacturer designs and develops and builds an instrument, multimeter, signal generator, whatever it is, right? And they say, okay, we're going to develop the performance specs that this will hold for X period of time. And they determine what that cal interval is going to be. 6 months, 12 months, whatever. It'll hold it for this long to these tolerances. And then they'll make changes to the product and they'll make changes to their specs and they publish them in different places. They got a marketing spec on the web. They got a data sheet. They've got performance verification manual, whatever. And those don't all end up tying together with those changes, right? So now you've got different specs floating out there from the company that made the instrument. That is a quality blind spot right there in itself. And so the customer comes along and says, I need to have this instrument for this production process. Yep, those specs meet my needs. Well, which one did they look at? Which one did the Cal Lab look at when they went to calibrate it? And if those are off, you're calling it out of tolerance too soon or intolerance longer than should, whatever, right? It creates the quality blind spot without you even knowing it. Those types of things need to be better controlled. Now, I know that there's a lot to that, but that's just one piece of it. The customer understanding what they've chosen for the process versus what the Cal Lab is doing, that's where you can't have people not paying attention to that. That's critical. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It does.
So Steve, did you want to add to something to that, Steve? Or you ready for my next question?
Well, I'm ready for your next question.
All right.
I think Howard made some really good points there. The way things change with manufacturers, sometimes it's mind-boggling.
It is. It's surprising. It happens more often than you think.
So I can't imagine how you do your job, Steve, because you've got a plethora of quality documents that you've got to keep track of, that you've got to adhere to. You've got to manage each document independently and then also associate with the other documents to make sure they don't collide with each other. Wow. It's amazing that no wonder you're an expert and no wonder they don't want to let you go. I wouldn't want to let you go either. But with that, though, becomes the question that is supposed to solve your many documents, and that is the world of being accredited. You mentioned earlier that a few years back that you guys decided to become, I say you guys, your particular site decided to become accredited to 17025. Is there any particular reason you decided that? And what is your opinion on accreditation? Has it evolved over the years? Do you think it's the answer to everything or not? Because I'm going to reserve my judgment what I think about accreditation until I get your 2 cents.
Okay, so I think Gary Kennedy wanted the lab to become accredited, selected a couple of areas. He just wanted a third party to come in and look at the laboratory and evaluate it in a sense that offers some credibility. In a sense that, hey, look, we've had someone come in from outside, they've assessed us, this is what they found, we're taking care of it, boom. And so I think that was his decision, just to have a third party independent look, someone come in and assess the laboratory. I think it's been good. I think accreditation has evolved over time. Is it the end all? I don't know. I think it's one of the better things we've got going right now, in that the world's becoming smaller. There are laboratories all across the globe. We've got all these mutual recognition arrangements. And so I think it's great that we have bodies that are out there assessing laboratories to 17025, for example. And I think what's equally as important is who's assessing these accreditation bodies, what kind of standards are they being held to, and I know that's just, it's really interesting, because when like I said, when I started at NIST, and I ended up writing procedures for myself for Guide 25, and then later on, 17025 came into play, and at that point in time, the NMIs really weren't accredited. They weren't, looking to be accredited. But I know that while I was working at NavLab, NIST hired Sally Bruce as the NIST quality manager. Mm-hmm. And Sally had worked in NavLab. And it was great because for the first time, the calibration I won't say for the first time, but the calibration services were looking at, let's recognize that we're operating a calibration service that meets the requirements of 17025. And so NavLab provided training to some of the group leaders and the physicists, engineers, and the different groups. And so that then they began developing processes, procedures. So yes, we meet the requirements of 17025. And that is something that several other NMIs around the world have done. And now the NMIs actually have groups where they go out and do peer reviews of their calibration services, which I think is great. And then we have all the bodies that, you can sign signatories to, and then we have ILAC and IAF, and now they're merging to become the Global Accreditation Cooperation Incorporated. I think it's moving in the right direction. People need to really take a serious look at what are your expectations of your accreditation body? Why do you want to become accredited? Are your customers demanding it? It does provide some level of confidence where maybe before there wasn't any. With 45662, after it came out, it was out for a while before NATO finally, said, okay, we're going to sign on to 45662, because we want to ensure that these instruments that are on weapon systems are being calibrated and controlled. And so I think that was kind of like a beginning of a global type thing, if you will, for we need something to ensure that we're all doing this right. We're doing it the same way, fashion.
Exactly right.
I'm going to put my foot in my mouth. I don't mean this to be negative. I personally think that accreditation, because of cost savings and the ability of how much it costs to be accredited and how much an assessment costs, that we're getting, what's the word I want to use, watered down assessments now, where qualified assessors don't have enough time to do a full assessment that's going to better guarantee, and I hate to use the word guarantee because nothing's a guarantee, but perform a better assessment on these labs that are out there. And I say that personally because, good or bad, I've had a lot of experience with labs that make bad measurements that really shouldn't be accredited. And that can be said for anything. But over the last 10 years, I see where the accreditation is being watered down. And I know that you both got to be politically correct in your answers, but I'd really like to get both of you guys' opinion on that, if you're able to share it without getting yourself in trouble.
So I want to take a look at the whole purpose of accreditation, right? Take away all the magic around it, right? All the mystery. What we're trying to do here, if you go back to 45662, and you're looking at test accuracy ratio, where you're saying, I have an instrument that I need to calibrate, I need to figure out where its performance has gone over time. And I need to compare that to something better so that I can measure how far off it's drifted or shifted or worn or whatever the term is. How do you determine that ratio is enough? All right, 45662 said you want to have a 4-to-1. Actually, even before that, I think they were shooting for 10-to-1 at one point, right?
Yeah.
But in any case, you want something better because, and I've said this analogy before, if you have two clocks hanging on the wall, they're the same exact model, they're reading different, how do you know which one's right? You've got to have something that you know is controlled and is better. Now, let's expand that thought to measurement uncertainties, which takes that denominator of that equation, the standard, and then adds all these other variable components that can cause that number to drift, right? And they're usually smaller components than the accuracy of the standard, sometimes not. Without getting into the math and the details, how can you qualify that that's a good measurement if you're not considering all these factors? Let's take it back to the simple TAR, test accuracy ratio. If you didn't know the accuracy of the standard, how can you qualify that that's a good standard to use for the measurement? So whether you're talking about just that one component, the accuracy of the standard, or you're talking about all these other things that can affect the measurement, how can you walk away from that saying, I don't need to know those things? You have to quantify those to validate the measurement is good or not. And that's what accreditation is all about. That's what the intent of that was supposed to be. And it's kind of turned into something else, I think.
I'll agree with Howard. I would say choose your accreditation body wisely. I don't think all accreditation bodies are created equal.
I mean, that goes back to Phil Stein's paper on buyer beware, right?
Yeah. I think a person, if they're going out to become accredited, they need to really do their homework, look at the accreditation bodies. What type of work do the different accreditation bodies do? Do they work in the industry I'm in? How many labs do they have in my industry? All of these things. And you can look at the experience of their assessors, all of these things, which I think are crucial. When I was doing consulting, I didn't recommend any accreditation body whatsoever. All I said was, this is where you guys are. This is where you need to go. And there's a number of accreditation bodies out there. Just start doing your homework and talk to them. I've worked with some organizations that started out with one accreditation body, and they determined, well, these guys really aren't meeting my needs, so we're going to switch to a different accreditation body. Okay, that's great. I would just say, whatever you're going to do your homework before you sign up for that first assessment.
I think accreditation, without doubt, it goes without question, has improved the quality of the measurement made by the metrology community. No doubt about it. But me kind of being a pessimist sometimes, I still think we got a ways to go. I think that we, as you said, Steve, we've got to continue to grow with it. We've got to be better at it. And I think that when I see in the services that I provide, that I support, the proficiency testing in the accreditation community, I get to see things that are probably more than I should be. But my opinion is based on what I see, and we cannot stop right now. We have to demand more of the lab to become a better lab, and that's why the risk now. That's a really huge component. That's the flavor of the month, is the risk assessment components that we're taking. If we do it to a risk assessment, then the laboratories will see that they're not performing well enough, and they're not getting a good enough assessment by the assessors. And the assessors can't do the assessment they want because they're limited in time, they're limited in cost, they're limited in a number of factors. So again, to cut to the chase, accreditation is good for our industry. It helps us make better measurements.
When it's applied, right? If you're just chasing a certificate to say you've got the checkbox, that's not it. Yeah. That whole accreditation process teaches you how to quantify those other variables, right? Besides accuracy of the standard, how to quantify those. And if you can't specifically quantify them, how to create an estimate based on probability distributions. Yes, I know I said some scary words there, right? Getting into probability and statistics, but it teaches you that process. And once you get that down, then you can see where there's problems that you may be able to control. And if you can't control them, at least you can quantify them.
Yeah, I agree.
Learn the accreditation process, you apply it, help your customers with that, but you got to prove that you're actually meeting those. And that's where you were talking about, Chuck. We fall short. The labs have many technicians who are not grasping the whole concept and applying it properly, and they get different results than what you said you were supposed to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, obviously, I'm biased, and I admit that when it comes to, the conversation about proficiency testing. But total bias set aside, it goes without question that the only way you can prove your competency of a measurement is by participating in a proficiency test.
Oh my gosh, that's your closing line. Are we done already?
No, I don't have to say it again. But one of the problems I have is that the accreditation bodies, it's not singular, is they really don't enforce their current requirements for participation. They do a wink and a nod, and they go around the corner and they have all these exceptions to the rule and this kind of thing.
Or it's just lack of follow-up. It could be that simple. Lack of follow-up.
It could be. I'm not part of the assessment,
right?
But I have enough cardinal knowledge to the fact where I could prove to a committee, if you will, that we're not doing the ABs are not doing what they say they do. And if they enforce their own rules, it would give me a better position on that accreditation matters. And you're proving that you're accredited because you've used your processes, you've used your entire program to make the better measurement, and then you've proved it by this method, and that method is participation. That's just my closing argument, if you will.
No, I'm sold on that one. You don't have to
and so,
sell me anymore.
And so, I think that these PTs are an incredible tool in the accreditation toolbox.
Yes.
They need to be paid attention to. And I know that kind of what gets me is that you get involved in some of these PTs or ILCs, and some people I think are just looking, did I get that pass? Did I get that ESA bin between 1 and -1? And if I did, man, that's great. I'm good. Okay, let's open up our uncertainties, ensure that we get in there and we pass. And they're just looking for a pass. But I tell you, it's a big disservice to their laboratory and to themselves and their organization.
That's right.
I know since I've been here in this laboratory, PTs, ILCs, all of these things are very important to our program. We are involved, like we do ILCs, PTs with all the other centers. We've been getting involved in a DOD ILC program that's run with DOD, DOE, and then we're involved. That's another way we get to check ourselves. And then all the PTs that we do through NAPT. And Chuck Kirk and Howard, you know Kirk, he's kind of guy where if he gets an ESA bin of 0.5, he's concerned.
Yeah.
And he starts looking deeply. Yeah. What are we doing? What do we need to do better? What's not right? Let's go back and look at these numbers, start crunching. I'm not saying it can become a science experiment, but it's just say that we truly use all of these PTs, ILCs, to see how we're doing and what can we do better.
To control the risk.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I can attest to that, Steve. I mean, we've been with you guys for going on 14 years now. And again, it's not even open for debate that the programs at NASA have improved because of their additional enrollments in PT programs. It goes without question. And you guys embrace it. And that's what all companies should do. They should embrace PTs. Maybe I don't care if you use any PT. I mean, I'd love you if you did. But if you're not using us, use somebody or do it yourself. Do it correctly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let's ask some personal questions. So, Steve, is there one thing in your life, metrology related, that had the most impact on your metrology career? Is there? I mean, I'm not sure there is. I'm hoping there is, because if it's not, I'm going to have egg on my face. But I'm hoping that there's one factor of life that said, I want to be a metrologist. Is there anything like that happened in your life?
Well, I think it started when I wanted to join the Navy. Before I joined the Navy, I worked for my dad. He had a machine shop, a plastic injections molding company. And so I knew all about calipers, micrometers, making measurements, all this. And I decided I wanted to join the Navy because I wanted to stop working for my dad. But we're the best of friends. He lives 15 minutes from me. It's all good. But so I went to the recruiter's office and then went to talk to the Navy, and I said, this is what I want to do. And this was in December. And for the School for Instrumentmen, which is the laboratory guys, wasn't going to be available until like May or June. And so that means I couldn't go to boot camp till much later. And I'm like, no, I want to leave now. And so I ended up having to go a different route. So I went in the Navy, but I became an optical man. So we worked on binoculars, sextants, ship's big eyes, periscopes, all these things, which I was okay with that because, it's a laboratory environment, nice and clean, get me out of a machine shop. So it's while I was working in the optical shop on board my first ship, and some of the guys in the IM lab, Merck's lab, were going to PMEL school. And so I started finding out, well, what's this PMEL school all about? And so I found that out. It's like, well, I want to go. And so I wanted to go to PMEL school. And my, let's see, the first time I was denied. So I asked again, and I said, okay. So I got to go to Lowry. So I came back, and I didn't want to work in the optical shop anymore. I wanted to work in the Merck's lab. I wanted to calibrate gauges. Mm-hmm. And the senior chief I worked for at the time said, well, if I let you go, I have to let so-and-so go because there's another guy in the optical shop who'd gone to PMEL school also. So I said, okay. So then in my spare time, I went over to the Cal Lab and I started getting all my requirements signed off to work in the Cal Lab. And so over a period of time, I had gotten everything signed up all the way through chief. And so then I went back to my boss, our division officer, and I said, I really want to go to work in the Cal Lab. And so I put in a request to do it, and he approved it. And so he said, you can go because the other guy hasn't done anything, hasn't shown any interest. And so
oh, wow. That worked
at that point, I got to go work in the Cal Lab. So the big joke at the time was they had to send an optical man over to the Cal Lab to straighten all the instrument men out. And so I began working in the Cal Lab on board the ship, and that was what really did it for me. That it's like, I really enjoy this. It's challenging. I was working with great people, and so eventually, actually, I was able to change my rate and go from an optical man to an instrument man, mm-hmm. which that's a whole nother story. And so when I ended up getting out of the Navy, I was an instrument man. But it was that time in the Navy when I started calibrating things and going to PMEL schools. That made a mark on me. It's like,
when did you go through Lowry?
Yeah, what year?
I went through Lowry in 84.
Okay, so I was there in 83, just the year before.
Okay. Yeah, so I went through at the end of 84, beginning of 85.
Okay.
When I came back, I'd been back shortly, and I got called up to personnel, and they said, hey, you need to sign, because I was due to get out in the end of 85. And they said, hey, you need to sign a 1-year extension because you went to C school. I said, no, I don't. I said, you guys should have caught that before I went.
Yeah, too late. You missed it.
But I ended up re-enlisting anyway because I really enjoyed what I was doing.
Yeah.
What ship were you on, Steve?
The first ship I was on was the USS Acadia, AD-42, a destroyer tender. It's been decommissioned and it's gone. And my second ship was USS Cape Cod, AD-43, and it too is decommissioned and gone.
Wow.
I kind of thought that I was going to say you're probably on the Midway too, because that's been decommissioned as well.
Actually, I was on the Constitution initially.
Oh, you were? Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Now, one of my favorite questions before I let Howard jump in here. What's your favorite movie?
First thing that came to my mind was Top Gun.
Really?
And that's a Navy
thing. The first
thing.
one or the second one? Did you like the second one?
Oh, yeah.
I like the second one.
Yeah.
But the second one's just not as believable as the first one. But I think the reason why I say Top Gun is because I worked for a chief, and he had a surround sound home theater. And he invited some of us over to watch Top Gun. And when you watch Top Gun in surround sound and you've got all these afterburners going off behind you, jets taking off, it's kind of like a wow.
Okay.
Fun. All right. So you've been all around the world. What's your favorite place to go back to? Where should I go that I haven't been before?
I'd say come visit Tennessee.
I've been to Tennessee. I love it. Absolutely love it. So I lived in Florida. My wife and I lived in Florida for 12 years, and we loved that. I was at Kennedy Space Center. And we've been in California, Southern California, and liked it out there. We're in Missouri right now, Kansas City. This is where her family is. But we do miss Florida. I did like that. But we've been to Tennessee a few times. And there's nothing that I don't love about Tennessee. It's fantastic. So to me, Florida is like my first pick because that felt like home to me, even though I was raised in Chicago. I loved Florida. Tennessee is right there next to it. I think it's a great state.
Oh, Howard, I didn't know you grew up in Chicago. I grew up in Decatur.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 20 miles south of the center of Chicago, a little town called Lansing, Illinois, right on the border of Indiana.
Yeah.
Bears fan?
Happy wife, happy life. I'm a Chiefs fan. My next door neighbor happens to be from Chicago as well. He was on the show earlier this season. He is an avid Bears fan. We watched last night, came down to the wire.
My gosh.
I was just, since the Chiefs are out of it, I'm like, come on, you guys can do this. And they just didn't get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sad.
Great game.
Yeah.
Okay, so the favorite place we've got, favorite movie we got. Now we got to go with what's your favorite food?
It's Mexican.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. I lived in San Diego for 9 years.
Yeah, great food there. I was just there.
In the Navy. I was in the Navy there. And
yeah.
I loved Southern California of the 80s.
Of the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Of the 80s.
Yeah.
And I mean, I loved it there. And then my wife, Jennifer, she had a Mexican restaurant for 10 years, and she's a wonderful, wonderful cook. I should probably say chef. Yes, chef. But yeah, I'd say it's definitely Mexican. And you said you did tacos at Christmas. I'm like, dude.
I love having tacos at Christmas. It's so easy and it's so good. And I love the leftovers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, before we start to close out the program, I got to ask one more serious question. And, this is a question we kind of ask almost everybody, Steve, that's an expert in their field. What advice would you give to someone that's entering metrology right now for the first time? What would be your advice to me if I just signed up for PML and I'm going to go to PML next week?
I would say be a sponge. Soak up everything you possibly can. Listen to your instructors.
That, yeah.
Ask questions. No matter what you think, ask that question. Because I'll tell you what, you'll get answers. And yeah, I would just say be a sponge. Learn from everyone around you. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And yeah, don't be afraid to take risks.
I agree with you completely.
I love the sponge. I think you're the first person that's used the reference, be a sponge. I really like that. Yeah. That's a perfect, analogy of what you got to be to become really good at our profession. Is you got to, well, we kind of say it a different way, Steve. I've always said that, learn the measurement. That's what I've been preaching for at least 20 plus years now. And whenever people ask me a similar question to that, it's, I think we're kind of missing the boat a little bit right now, where we're teaching technicians more about pushing buttons versus learning the measurement. Why does something affect the measurement? Why does the resistance go off? That kind of thing. And we need to do more of that training of the technicians. So being a sponge applies to that as well. Be the sponge. Learn everything you can about the measurement you're making.
Okay, next question. What one human being in your life influenced you the most or had the biggest impact on your life?
I would have to say there's a Japanese man named Daisaku Ikeda. And I've been practicing Buddhism since 1984. Mm-hmm. He was the leader of the organization called Soka Gakkai International, and he was like a mentor. And just his understanding of the philosophy of Buddhism and putting it into practical terms and ways that I could observe it, absorb it, and apply it to my life has been fundamental to all the changes I've made in my life.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Okay. Well, believe it or not, Steve, it's been an hour.
Yeah. Goes quick. Goes quick.
It really does. So hopefully that you've enjoyed being with us today. We certainly enjoyed having you with us.
Steve, great having you on the show. Great talking to you, getting to know you better.
So any last words that you have for us, Steve?
Just appreciate the invite and really enjoyed the conversation. This is good. A lot of good stuff came out of this one.
I agree.
Okay, as usual, I want to thank our sponsor, NEPT. If you like our programs, like it, share it with your friends, get everybody that you know in the metrology community on board to listen to Howard and I yip and yap about us. And hopefully next time we have as good a guest as we had today. It was a great great conversation, Steve. I want to, not only thank you for participating with us today, but you've been a real leader for going on 40 plus years now in the metrology community. And I, for one, really, really appreciate that, all that you've done for helping the community become a better organization than what it is. So that's really great. So thank you for that. So my closing words are always simple. If you want to prove your technical competency, then you need to enroll in a proficiency test today. With that being said, take care. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
How easy got?
Thank you.